Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. Today I have brought out my newly modified Element Gatekeeper. As you can see here, I took two front axles off of an axial Capra, so this thing now has portal gearing as well as portal clearance because it's running on Capra Axles. Back here you can see the servo sticking up through the bed cage up here, which means that I have rear steer on this truck. So with this controller, which is a FlySky GT5, all you do is twist the knob up here, and there you go. You control your rears and you can control your front independently. Inside here we got a Hobbywing Axe brushless combo, and then we've got two Savic servos powering the steer axles. Now, driving it around just a minute before I started recording here, this thing is making some pretty awful clicking sound. Not entirely sure what's going on with that, so if you guys are real big Element fans and you know of a common clicking issue in the transmission, I'm thinking, please let me know. But we came out to this awesome rock area. I went ahead and jumped in my Razor today to get all the way out here, which is pretty remote, so hopefully we won't have anyone bugging us. And we're gonna be driving the Element here on Capra Axles. Let's see how this new buggy performs. Well, guys, I had my axial Capra for over a year and a half, and since starting the channel, I've been making a lot of videos with the Capra, and I kind of just felt like that it had kind of played out in my eyes. I went out and wheeled some extreme stuff with it. I showed you guys what it was capable of, and I kind of just knew the absolute limits of it, so I could look at something and know if it was possible or not, which is super awesome to know your rig that well. But kind of once you've wheeled the things you wanted to wheel, I don't know, it loses some of the fun as far as can I make that, can I not? So there are some obstacles that I was actually defeated on permanently because I did sell my Capra. It is gone. I sold it to fund this project, but I kept the axles out of my old Capra. Here we are going up through this super awesome rock terrain. This truck is a little bit differently proportioned than my Capra, so we're gonna cover that here in a second. Right out of the box, these Element Gatekeepers have a 12.8 wheelbase, I believe. So this truck is a little bit longer, and I did have to play with the suspension length to get these axles to work just right, because the axle side mounts are a little bit different than what Element calls for on their axles. So it's already kind of a Frankenstein project. It went to a 4-link front end instead of the 3-link, which is kind of too bad because Element makes a really awesome metal panhard mount for their trucks. Here we go, making it work, trying to keep the rock, trying to keep that tire on that back ledge that it just fell off of. I already have broken a portal axle on the front end. I was running overdrive in the trans, which is the most aggressive overdrive you can get with a kit transmission. I think someone said it was around 15 or 12%, plus I think another 15 or so on the axle, the portal gearing actually. So between the two, it had a ton of overdrive going into it, and I was playing on some rocks in my backyard and got the front tires in a bind and actually broke one of the portals. So we may just move on from this one because I don't want to break my truck immediately. But Element Gatekeeper on these Capra axles solves the issue of the original Gatekeeper where they're not wide enough. The original Gatekeeper is just super narrow for how much top weight they have with the cage, and throwing some wider axles on like these really helps make them stable. This thing is capable of articulating a ton if that rear servo doesn't hang up on the frame rails in the rear, which I plan on modifying in the future to help it articulate easier. Now, I made some really big changes to the suspension setup on this truck compared to how the kit suggests that you set the springs and shocks. I did my favorite mod that I run on almost all axial products, which is the spring cup that holds the springs up in place that go on your shock shaft. I removed those so the springs sit down onto the axles. So in doing that, it allows the whole truck to settle the difference between where the spring was and where it hits on the axle. So you lose about 1/3 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch of ride height just doing that. And then basically I run a super low setup. So the suspension has almost no up travel, but has a ton of droop. That's my preferred setup. Gives you a lower center of gravity, and I'm not really rock bouncing out here with these, so droop setup works just fine for me. Now I am running some overdrive in this truck. I'm running just the transmission now. I removed the portal overdrive that was in my axles. This is going to be a fun project though. We're going to test and tune and get this thing performing just awesome. So whether we got to incorporate that sway bar again somehow, or we just got to test and tune with these shocks and the spring rates, we'll get this thing crawling in no time. There we go. Here we go, climbing up and around this rock and sand. Just gonna try and skate by all this stuff. Actually gonna crab along there. Check out those clouds in the background too, those are awesome. I love when the weather's different like this. Down here where it's nice and warm and sunny so much of the time, getting rainstorms to roll through are just so awesome. It's such a cool change of scenery. I'll tell you guys this, I was very surprised at the interest in the Gatekeeper video of the first one that I made, so I appreciate everybody watching that. That's pretty cool. Seems like anytime I grab a new truck there seems to be a little more interest, but this one really blew up, so thanks everybody for watching that. As well as we just crossed over 2,000 subscribers here on West Desert Wheeler, which is it's a pretty big milestone, man. I love anytime the channel doubles in its size. And so going from 1,000 to 2,000 as fast as we did, I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much for subscribing, commenting, and following along. Here we go. I kind of want to overdrive the rear if I could, actually. See, this is where the width of the axles really helps. The portals are clearing the rock up front. Using that rear to walk the rear end down. Rear steer is so helpful in so many ways out here. May have gone a little too far. Let's just take a quick back up. Now we got to straighten the rear because we're not getting the... Oh, ouch. This is it. This is very interesting because I've heard guys in the rock crawling competitions talking about portal cars that like to dogleg for weird reasons when the suspension gets bound up. This car is a prime example of what they are talking about. You start turning and whatnot in weird directions, pushing into the suspension and loading it up in certain ways, and these axles just want to twist and wrap up into the air. So got to figure out what's going on here. I'm guessing it's probably those trailing arms and where the rear shocks are mounted. If we get the rear shock onto the axle, it would probably really solve a lot of our issues here. All right, guys, never driven this line before. A very important aspect to any truck is how well it can go down hills. So climbing hills is a bunch of the focus for most people, but if your weight balance is way off and you got a bunch of forward weight, they do not descend well. So let's take a look at this truck coming down this fairly steep, ledgy climb. This isn't too bad. I wouldn't expect it to come off its wheels. So let's put that to the test and see if it stays controlled. So the front end is really gonna start dropping here. That rear tire's still up on the rock. Let's just make a bad call and drive it on the rock. And we're gonna crab this direction. You know what, we'll just drive straight in the front. We'll intentionally drive this bad and see how it handles it. The rear suspension's completely unloaded and it doesn't like it, but the truck is sticking so far. Straighten up the rear. Suspension's doing nothing. They're just basically fully extended, but the truck stayed planted and came on down the hill. Well, guys, it didn't come out as a perfect performer right after my modifications, but truthfully, this is what I enjoy most. I like driving the most, and then following that, I really enjoy tuning. Messing with little settings here and there, preloads on the springs, to try and get these trucks to perform like I want. And this one is definitely going to be a project for tuning. So looking forward to it. We just got to see what this truck wants to really get this thing to start sticking to these rocks. But I greatly appreciate you guys watching. Please get subscribed if you are not already. Drop a comment and a like if you have not seen a Gatekeeper on Capra Axles before. Until next time, guys, keep the rubber side down.